Welcome to Crowd Factor. I'm Max Keiser in London. I've got Simon Dixon in Hong Kong, and from Nairobi, we've got Elizabeth Rosiello. Elizabeth, welcome to Crowd Factor.
Hey, Max. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's talk about BitPesa. I just want to describe it first. Here's the Wikipedia entry. BitPesa is a Nairobi-based digital currency exchanger and money transfer service that provides an online platform to convert digital currencies such as Bitcoin into local African currencies. Founded in 2013 by Elizabeth Rosiello and Duncan Goldie Scott, the goal of BitPesa is to significantly lower the cost of remittances into Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, Elizabeth, we had you on the Keiser Report a couple of years ago, and your story and BitPesa's story is remarkable for a couple of reasons. First of all, you're taking crypto into Africa, which is a fantastic use case for crypto. Can you talk a little bit what's happening in Nairobi?
Sure. I mean, since we last talked, we're halfway to the moon. I mean, the amount of speed we've caught up here, and we just came back from a school where we had 45 students who already knew about Bitcoin, who had already had a paper wallet. We thought we were introducing them to the technology, but they had already heard about it 6 months ago. So, I mean, now last night we were at a restaurant with our whole team, and there was a group talking about Bitcoin behind us, which, you know, was a first for us. So, I mean, I just think that it's been in the local media. We got invited to the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, where there's an entire panel on Bitcoin here in Nairobi. So, I mean, just the local knowledge about it, just the popularity. You see students coming out of schools, creating their own apps. We've got, finally, other competitors coming into the space. We've expanded to Tanzania. We're about to launch in Uganda and Nigeria. So just in general, the ecosystem has grown, the popularity has grown, and I guess the acceptance has definitely grown. So Bitcoin in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, in the last 2 years is in a drastically different place than when we first talked.
Right. So in Africa, there's an opportunity to leapfrog into the 21st century because folks there are the unbanked, you know, the people that don't have bank accounts. But guess what? They don't need a bank account because they have a mobile phone and they have Bitcoin. And that's pretty much the story, right? Because you're going to leapfrog the whole banking infrastructure, the exact use that Bitcoin was designed for. We see it in Africa, correct?
Yeah, and you know, this is a issue close to my heart, and I hear the word unbanked thrown around a lot. And I moved here in 2009, and the percentage of unbanked from 2009 to 2014, even without Bitcoin, has plummeted from above 70 to below 40. That's just Kenya, but you've seen progress all across the continent, and a lot of that has been to two things. One, the boom of microfinance and micro-lending, community lending, which is formalizing traditional lending practices. And the other thing has been about mobile money and a real push by governments, regulators, companies to utilize mobile money to leapfrog. So when I attended the Global Mobile Money Conference in Istanbul, and they were talking about the future, sorry, that's the generator.
That's okay.
When they were talking about the future of mobile money, they were saying, one day in Europe, you'll be able to take your phone and withdraw from an ATM without a card. And I said, we're already doing that in Kenya. So, you know, I go to an ATM, and with my phone, I can put in a code and withdraw directly from there. So that leapfrogging already happened before Bitcoin. But now how do we take that further? How do we take the mobile money that we already had? Sorry, we're at a barbecue place. How do we take that that technology advancement that was already happening with mobile money, and now how do we make that even more solid? So how do local solutions or regional solutions now integrate with the global economy? So how do you connect mobile money systems here in East Africa to Canada or Europe or Australia or South America or China? And that is where I think Bitcoin is really exciting. So rather than just helping the unbanked, I think it's connecting solutions serving the unbanked to international global financial services.
All right, let me bring in Simon Dixon. Simon Dixon and I run the Bitcoin Capital, which is raising lots of money, and we're very excited about what's happening there. Simon Dixon, why don't you come on in, and what are your thoughts at this point?
Yeah, well, we should definitely disclose that we have made an investment in BitPesa, so we're in. But it's also worth mentioning that what's happening with BitPesa is a combination of when you get the right product at the right time, in the right market with the right team, then you're more getting investors knocking on your door. And I think that's what's happening with BitPesa at the moment. And we're all keen to see this see this happen. And I know we're very excited about announcing to the Bitcoin Capital investors about our investment. What I want to know actually is what's going on with the offline world. So obviously, Bitcoin was designed for the online world, but the reason that the payment systems in Kenya, M-Pesa and stuff like that seemed to work was because they figured out a way of doing it offline. Is there anything that we can do with Bitcoin, and how far away is that? And is M-Pesa, is BitPesa looking at that?
Okay, this is a great question. So first of all, if you think about Bitcoin in Sub-Saharan Africa, and I say ex-South Africa, because South Africa is a bit of a different story. So between South Africa and just the Sahara, that big chunky part in Sub-Saharan Africa, if you're looking at it there and you're looking at what Bitcoin can do, I don't think we're at the place right now where Bitcoin is a great wealth storage mechanism for people at the bottom of the pyramid, so low-income populations. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it to low-income relatives in New York City, much less, low-income people here in Sub-Saharan Africa. I don't think it's that's where it is right now, not to say that's not where it's going. So if you think about Bitcoin as a solution for connecting markets, so international connections, so international customers, international import-export. If I want to buy solar panels from China and I'm living in Tanzania, this is the kind of reason why you would use it. And the people that are doing that are living in urban or peri-urban areas where data right now is quite widely accessible and pretty cheap. So light data wallets that let you access Bitcoin payments, or solutions, websites, apps that are data light that still let you, cloud-based but not super intensive, are more than functioning. I mean, everybody uses WhatsApp here. I have a taxi driver in Tanzania I used 6 months ago, constantly asking me questions on WhatsApp. I have, a woman that we work with in the house, and she, grew up in a very rural, poor economy. She didn't see a doctor till she was 30. She's a 65-year-old woman. She's Googling recipes to cook at my house. I come home and she's Googled a recipe all by herself. And this is a woman that got data 6 months ago, who has no formal education over the age of 11. And, 6 months of data is all it takes for her to kind of be in the same place as somebody like my mom coming out of New York City who has a master's degree. So I think data is coming, and data is almost here. And I wouldn't say it's in every rural area, certainly not in every country. There are definitely places where it's more accessible or less accessible. I just got back from Kinshasa. Data coverage in the capital was awesome in DRC. I'd say a huge part of the country, it's not the case. But so I think in the next 2 years, 3 years, data is going to be pervasive everywhere where it's needed. And there's a lot of great companies working on that. So I think we can kind of skip ahead, and we don't need to kind of build USSD-based or dumb phone-based technologies just yet. Because again, who's using Bitcoin? Anybody who's using Bitcoin is somebody that's living in an area where they probably have data or can get it easily. Now, the students I just was talking to this morning, they don't want to pay for a ton of data to download a Bitcoin node. So this is where you'd have like lightweight versions of applications, and they're asking me how do they start coding on top of the blockchain, and how do they use so an API like Chain or blockchain.info is super helpful for them because it gives them a lightweight version to access the blockchain. So those kind of solutions are great, but I don't think we need to scale it down all that much because this is a moving train over here.
Yeah.
And what about
go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
The political environment. So it seems like in Wall Street and London, there's initially they saw it as a big threat to entrenched interest, and so they didn't seem too keen on supporting innovation. But am I right in saying that they're more open to innovation out there? They see this as something that could further their economy, open up their economy, or is it something that they're trying to hold back, that they don't understand?
Well, if we use mobile money as an example, I mean, there is nobody more welcoming than the government of Kenya, the government of Tanzania, Uganda, Ghana, Nigeria. I mean, these are governments that have actively embraced mobile money, that have created mobile money legislation and e-money payment legislation in record time. I mean, I really appreciate living in these regions where the governments are so excited and inclusive. They have committees on innovation. I mean, not to say that any government moves super lightning fast, but I mean, we're almost catching up to the same pace as you would see in Western Europe or North America. So I mean, I think if you look at the regulation, it's leapfrogged. So you might not have ever had advanced, telephone banking or postal banking regulation like you'd have in Germany, and they skipped right to mobile money regulation. So that's where I see them having like the leapfrog effect being really exciting. And it's interesting to see the kind of young people that they're inviting in, and the fact that they're involved on panels and discussions, and they're inviting people that are paying for incubators, and startup companies are happening. I mean, Barclays is moving to startup incubation hubs here. They've done it in South Africa. Facebook just moved for an Africa Head. So, I mean, I think the time is now. I mean, it's definitely still not super easy to do business in every market, and you definitely need to know what you're doing. But it's an exciting time to be working in the space.
Yeah, Elizabeth, let me ask you, you mentioned the youth there. Now, this will be a generation in the last few years that has come of age in an era of crypto and in an environment that was not it wasn't a technological hub in any sense of the word, and suddenly they're almost leading the world in a lot of ways in the way to think about crypto. So you're right there. Do you see in this generation of youth coming up right now, do you see, what does that look like? I mean, this would be a completely different generation crypto, coming out of Africa. And this is really, you're seeing something, you have an eyewitness to something. Is it as profound as I'm suggesting it is?
Yeah,
and if so, can you talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny you said that, because just this morning, I mean, this week we're having our global offsite. So we have some developers that are in Estonia, and they're down here this week. So this is the first time, I mean, they've been working with us, they see M-Pesa, but this is the first time that they signed up for M-Pesa with their SIM cards when they went to a local shop and have been using mobile money. And they were like, wow, we knew it was this cool, but we didn't see it as being this cool. And then I was recounting this story to the group of students, and I'm like, you guys are growing up with M-Pesa. Look at these two guys here who, have traveled the world, gone to these great schools, live abroad, and they come here and they're amazed. You guys are at the center of it. And to them, they were kind of laughing that, they never really thought about it that way. But there's somebody who's grown up with it being second nature. And we've explained Bitcoin all over the world, from New York to Cameroon, to Accra, to Lagos, to Paris, to even Singapore. And we always talk about how easy it is to explain it to Kenyans or East Africans who know mobile money. We just say it's international mobile money, and they get it instantly. And while somebody else might really struggle with that. So that kind of speed and uptake, and also they've seen the adoption grow so much. I think seeing the adoption of a technology from just a few years ago being so hard to make domestic payments and transfers, and now it's so easy, they kind of believe that kind of upswing is possible. While you see people who have been using bank transfers in Europe for a very long time say, why would anyone ever change, and how could a new technology grow that fast? So I think it's one, the familiarity of digitized version of money, and the second is the kind of adoption rate of a technology kind of takeover of society.
Wow. Okay. Well, Simon, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, final thoughts. So obviously one of the things I really like about this is that you've built a real power team of investors. Obviously, Bitcoin Capital being number one. But can you talk about some of the other people that are backing you on this?
Well, I've got to say we've had a great support from the Bitcoin community from day one. Barry Silbert and Digital Currency Group through the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, Blockchain Capital, formerly known as Cryptocurrency Partners, have come in, and of course Pantera Capital Management, who sits on our board, Dan Moorhead. I mean, these guys from the day one realized not only is it exciting to support Bitcoin in emerging markets, but they've actively reached out. They've actively increased their knowledge of the market. They've come to visit us here, and they've really taken a ride. I mean, things take longer in these markets. We look in some aspects very much like other companies around the world, and in some aspects not at all. And I love the idea that BitPesa is helping them understand how any kind of startup works in this market and the differences that a geography can make. And I'm super excited to hear how they've spread it along. And they've been so inclusive. I mean, I'm invited all over the world. I mean, I've been really embraced by the Bitcoin community. Not everybody understood exactly what we were doing in the beginning, or what the market segment is, or just how advanced things were, or the difference even between mobile money and BitPesa. But as we've grown, so has the rest of the knowledge. And we've seen companies like BitGive come down here and do a project with us. Cefello, who we consider a great peer in the industry, reach out across the water to talk to us. So we just want to say thanks to the whole Bitcoin community, specifically the investors and all of the companies that have co-shareholding, because it's been a great way for us to connect with the rest of the world.
All right,
Max, when are we out
Elizabeth.
to Africa then?
Fantastic, Elizabeth. A great visionary and a great entrepreneur and a great company. Thanks so much for being on Crowd Factor.
Thanks for those kind words, Max, and thank you, Simon.
All righty.